Straker.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Ready?
Yeah. Allegiance to
Provide meaningful content.
provide meaningful content.
Don't get offensive.
Don't get offensive.
Glorify the music royalty.
Glorify the music royalty.
Catch the roundabout.
Welcome. Straker here.
And Lee here.
Catch the roundabout, or should I say catch the roundabout? All right, did that. You know, there's a really important topic that people don't think about enough, and it creates confusion. At least it did in my life and your life.
Yes.
And out of all the deep topics, one is why musicians have the same name as some other people, and then when you read a magazine, you get confused. And there's many examples. I can begin with an easy one.
Yeah.
You want to hear an easy one?
Yes, absolutely. It caused this issue actually caused many.
This has caused a
problems
lot,
for me
a lot of issues.
misunderstandings in the past.
So one of them, we got Glenn-Hughes, who you and I saw together actually in the deaddasies, and
At the Sony Hall, yes,
Right.
And we were talking about.
we talk about Glenn-Hughes is a legend from Deep Purple. I mean, he was in Black Sabbath. He was in Blackcountrycommunion. He's in Dead He's in Glenn-Hughes is like in everything. So he's a vocalist, bass player that from England. Both Trapeze, his original band.
Wales.
Right, Wales, and what a great player. But you know, all of a sudden, you get to like the late '70s, and then people are like, "Yeah, Glenn Hughes is great. He's really pushing the disco movement." And I was a little bit confused. I was just like, "What movement are they referring to?" So little did we know that in the Village People, there's a Glenn Hughes.
Yes, there was Glenn Hughes, and you know,
The Indian.
For me it was. For me, it was believable because Glenn Hughes was getting more into funky stuff, and he was friends with Stevie Wonder.
Right.
Actually, Stevie Wonder once said that Glenn Hughes was his favorite white soul singer. So that's a great compliment.
It's kind of a compliment,
They
but
were friends all during that Come Taste the Band, Deep Purple era, when were hanging out with David Bowie and all of that kind of. At that time, they were all in that LA scene or whatever it was.
But the thing that we
Never in LA.
but they were on that wavelength. But then we always wonder, like the people will talk about, have they ever considered making a record together? And then that way the confusion ends. So if I go to buy a Glenn Hughes album and I get faked out, I got the other Glenn Hughes on the album. So, you know, if you went to buy the album and he's singing and playing bass, and the guy with the Indian headset is on there too, you're like, okay, come along for the
I
ride.
buy it. I bought so many records that way.
Right,
Sometimes I even buy a record that evokes memory of a different musician, and
Right.
just because of the name. So,
Right? And then
and by the way, actually, I just ordered this record from Japan, and I will receive it in a few weeks. The one that Glenn Hughes did, that was his funky album called Playmeout.
yeah.
And it's pretty rare to find record, so I can't wait to get that. But of course, I listened to it many times before, and it's kind of drastically different from Deep Purple. I guess.
Yeah, he was on his own wavelength at the time. But I guess the question is, did Glenn Hughes ever buy any Village People recordings, or did the Village People ever sit around and listen to Glenn Hughes?
Yes, that's a question, and it's an essential question.
Something that some people should address. I didn't know if you had also a similar confusion with a musician you'd like to share.
This is very, very. This caused many issues for me. There's a guitarist called Steuartsmith who released some albums also with Glenn Hughes as a guest.
Oh, that's the bass player, Glenn
And
Hughes.
and he was a good friends with Ritchieblackmore. He said that Ritchieblackmore was his teacher, so his mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that album. That was sometime in the late '90s or something like that. And then many years ago, and many years after that, I found out that Eagles had a guitarist with the name Steuartsmith, who did all of these Don Felder parts perfectly in concert. And I saw him live. I didn't even know that was Steuartsmith at that time. It was blew my mind when I found that out.
Is there another Steuartsmith? Or you're just telling us that?
Maybe there's a third one. I don't know.
Oh, okay, wait. So the
there's
second one
from the Eagles.
Right, so the one with the
he's a
Eagles.
studio musician.
Studio musician.
And session musician.
So when you saw him, you were excited, thinking he was the guy working with Glenn Hughes and like Ritchie Blackmore.
Yeah, but it wasn't him.
And then when
he
it
was
wasn't him,
different.
you did the whole, oh, it's not you. I'm sorry. So you actually got faked out and went down the full journey.
It was confusing.
That's a lot to deal with. And then when you got to like the 80s, you know, you said like this, people would be like, hey, you think Roger Taylor's a good drummer? I'd go, yeah, as far as Queen goes. And then by the time you got to the 80s, people would go, I'm not talking about Queen. I go, what were you talking about? I'm talking about Duran. So a tale of two Rogers. Now, those guys, I mean, think about Queen made probably more bigger, you know, making movies about it and stuff. But it must have been a little confusing if someone calls up the drummer, hey, Rog, can you make the album? Can you make the date? As if they were doing studio sessions. And then the guy's like, what? And then the wrong guy shows up. How great would that be? Because they're playing the same instrument.
And I think around the same time they were really in demand.
Yep.
I mean, as bands, I don't think they did many outside sessions, you know, because their
Right.
bands were huge in the mid '80s. Queen had really successful albums.
But what if
And
you're
Duran was
Right.
on their peak, so who knows? That would cause many problems and actually many legal issues, because who knows how many companies
yeah.
really had their stake.
But what if you do an all-star session and you go, well, the purpose of this session is you want a big name like Roger Taylor, and you're expecting the guy from Queen, and instead your agent did the wrong thing. He sends it to the guy from Duran, and he shows up, and then you go, oh, okay, you'll do. All right. Hey, everybody, we got the guy from Duran instead. You good with that? And everyone just kind of goes, okay.
I think we should do further research on if they ever appeared on the same session. And I think the first thing to look at would be, for example, some humanitarian concerts and things like that.
Is it safe to say at
Charity.
Live Aid they were both there?
Yeah,
Wait a
maybe.
minute.
Yeah,
They were both there fighting world hunger together. What if they ran into each other in the backstage? Good show, Raj. Good show. And then, you know, they didn't do a photo op to capitalize. Or did the photographer screw it up when if they took the picture and said Roger Taylor with Roger Taylor, and then those are two interchangeable same names, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, it can cause issues.
It could.
Once, years ago, I worked at a restaurant where the owner had the same name like one of the waiters. So he made the waiter change his name, so he went by initial. He had to choose a different name. You can share the same name. So there's a big Roger and Raj.
It's a lot to take in. Did you have another one you want to rattle off? Because I got many here to think
I
about.
think, how about Mickjones from Foreigner and
I was just
and
going.
Mickjones from Clash?
Just going there. Tell me that didn't mess your mind up. Because I remember when Mick Jones got fired from the Clash, and it said Mick Jones starting his own band, bigaudiodynamite. I'm like, how's the guy in Foreigner going to do that too? See, and I knew who both Mick Jones were, but I was just like, could you please specify specifically? Because then when they said, Mick Jones is going to produce, what album did he produce? He produced somebody else's album, and it was unexpected. So, but I thought it was
maybe billyjoel or something.
Yeah. He did some production stuff, and then I'm sitting there going,
something else too. Yes.
But I was like, he has that kind of talent. I was like, oh wow, amazing. So Mick Jones, we know, spookytooth guy, Foreigner guy, great guitar player, great producer, but of no lesser weight, Mick Jones, co-leader of the Clash, writing and singing songs in the Clash, songs like Train in Vain, hits like Should I Stay or Should I Go, Spanish Bombs, and you know, when he got fired from the Clash, Bigaudiodynamite was like a brave, interesting '80s way to go. But I'm sure the other Mickjones and the other it's just like there was too much Mickjones in the news because then Lou Gramm quit Foreigner. They're like, what's Mick Jones going to do by himself? I'm like, I thought we already covered this.
And to add something, I think, I should check that on Wikipedia later, but I think that Angel, the band that was on Kiss record label Casablanca, amazing band with a great image, they had a bass player, I think he was called Mick Jones too. I can check the record now, I can go to the other room and check it out.
Well, that's a lot.
Let me see, I'm going to check on Wikipedia. If that's, I mean, this would really...
I mean, that'd be like...
Or maybe I made a mistake, let me see.
And why in the 80s, when everybody was trying to grab a piece of the market, wouldn't Mick Jones and Foreigner reach out to the guy from the Clash and just go, hey, I heard you just quit the Clash?
Yes, Mickey Jones. Mickey Jones,
Mickey
yes.
Jones. Mickey Jones, he likes to be called.
Yes.
But maybe some friends will call him Mick in that case. But definitely in print, because there was no internet back when I was reading this stuff in high school, in a magazine where it says Mick Jones, you want to be Mick Jones 1 or Mick Jones 2, or you should put the band's name in your name, Mick Jones Clash or Mick Jones Foreigner.
Or Mick Jones Angel.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that bad a thing. But wait, will both of those no, they never ran into each other on a stage, I don't think. But I wonder if Joe Strummer should have worked with Mick Jones from Foreigner. He could be like this, hey, now you're a Mick Jones I can get along with, but I don't like you. You're corporate rock. Something like that would have probably happened. But then Lou Gramm, when he left Foreigner, he could have went to the other Mick Jones and went, you know, I'm sick of that guy. I'll do punk. I don't care. Yeah, Mick, turn up the guitar. And it could have been Big Audio Lou Gramm. But none of these things happened, and they should have been considered. Do you have someone else buzzing on your list? Because I mean,
I think your list is very long. So let me share mine. I have less than you, I think.
Feel free.
How about Bill Evans? I mean, we have two big Bill Evanses. So.
Two giants of jazz, and then this is where it confused me. Hey, this is the jazz nerd section of the podcast for anyone who can't deal with it. But check it out. So the first time I saw John McLaughlin was with Mahavishnu opening for Weather Update in 1986, and they're like this, like, yeah, Bill Evans is in the band. I'm like, isn't that guy dead? But I was like, oh, I'll just go with it. So then I see this guy Bill Evans play sax. I'm like, wow, that guy's great. He's awesome. So then you start to get more into jazz, and you're like, oh, no, Bill Evans is a piano player, playing Miles Davis. He's great. Everybody likes this guy. So I'm like, okay, but here's where I ran into confusion. Once I straightened out the separate ones, when John McLaughlin made the album Time Remembered as a tribute to Bill Evans, I'm like, wow, he really liked his saxophone player. I'm like, he made a tribute to his side player, and I bought into it the whole time until I got the album, and I'm like, oh, he's talking about the piano player. So in jazz, if you miss the old Bill Evans who's dead on piano, you know, why not just live off the one that's living on saxophone?
Can you imagine you find yourself at a party and you start talking about music with somebody, and you use different musician's name, thinking that you're telling the other musician's story,
right?
And you make a fool out of yourself,
right? And they start ripping you apart, going, "Hey, excuse me, you, hey, Mr. Fraud, I don't think you ever met that guy." And then no, because if you're talking about the Bill Evans who was alive, like I said, I saw Bill Evans in 1986 with John McLaughlin. Imagine some drunk old jazz bo came up to me and he's like, you're a liar. He's been dead since 1980. I would hate to have to go through that, although I didn't have to. Just saying. So, you know, that was a nice addition. I didn't think I had that one coming up, so that's good.
Okay, you take over.
So
some great
semi-controversial, but we're going to mix two different musics. Dave Holland, great bass player. Miles Davis, Anthony Braxton, solo stuff. You know, a bass player from England who came to America, played on some seminal Miles Davis albums, In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew, and then worked in with Anthony Braxton and Sam Rivers, did the free jazz loft scene in New York, and then eventually weaved his way into his own quintet and well-respected, used on so many records. So we like that Dave Holland. We're great with him. But then in rock, if we went back in the time machine, we'd be like, oh wow, Dave Holland. Wait, the guy who plays drums for Trapeze? Oh,
And Judas Priest.
yeah, we're okay with that. Now, he was great in Trapeze playing with Glenn Hughes, if we overuse the name. Not to be confused with the guy in the Village People. He was playing with the Glenn Hughes who plays bass and sings from Deep Purple. So Trapeze was a great trio. And then you got him playing in the initial Judas Priest, and like, whoa, how can you go wrong? And then there came, we don't want to go into this in the podcast, but he became a naughty person, let's say. He went on to he had like a child sex scandal kind of porno thing that brought him down. And then he was booted away. It's mentioned in Glenn Hughes' book, the Glenn Hughes Deep Purple guy.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that Glenn Hughes and Tony Iommi had an album that they recorded together with Dave Holland.
And they got rid of the
drums.
drums.
After that happened, they didn't want to be associated with him. So I don't know, I think let me see that there's this session drummer that plays on everything. They replaced it with the session drummer tracks.
There's
I forgot who it was, but the guy that plays with types of. Maybe not billyjoel, but like with that kind of...
well, not Liberty DeVito. Not that guy. Not Liberty DeVito.
No, it's...
Aronoff? Not Kenny Aronoff?
Yeah. Wait. I think, yeah.
Maybe?
I think it is Kenny Aronoff, yeah.
He
played with John Mellencamp. I think, yeah. I think
so it was a hard time for, Glenn Hughes and Tony Iommi were like, good, we got rid of this guy's drum track. We got Kenny Aronoff, whatever. We feel good. And by the way, listeners, you can double check this stuff quicker than like we can, because we can't like totally multitask. But
if you're wrong somewhere, that's okay.
But a bigger problem would be for Dave Holland, the respected jazz bass player, when they're like, "Yep, busted on kiddie porn." I mean, what if the jazz label dropped him, or someone said, "Hey, Dave, we got the news." So glad that didn't spread like music cancer, and didn't finish off our friend Dave Holland, who we're good with. The other Dave Holland, we're going to leave him on the ash pile of heavy metal drumming, because that's where he put himself. So here's another weird. Now we'll move into this one. Made no sense. So David Cross, not an everyday name as far as like musicians from the '70s, but a big part of King Crimson in the mid '70s. He played violin. He played keyboards in the John Wetton era of King Crimson, and he was very talented, and he had a very cool thing going on. I mean, he played Central Park for that great concert, and then, his career, let's just say, calmed down a lot, and then he's probably done more in the past 10 years than he did in the past 30, because he was just making a bunch of musician appearances. So I'm like, oh, go David Cross, who's better than you? But then, when I saw the comedian David Cross, the ball guy, it was confusing the heck out of me. Like someone would say...
It makes no sense.
No.
No,
he's doing... It goes like this. Hey,
he's a household name for some people in two completely different fields.
Yeah, because when David Cross was back warming his career up again, the violinist, and people were like, hey, do you want to see that David Cross special? I'm like, definitely. and then you turn a movie on, or two thing, and you're like, who's that? Oh, that's David Cross. And I'm like, no, that's some ball guy with big glasses. Like, no, that's David Cross, the comedian. And you'd be like, does he play violin and keyboards? No? Okay. And then when I did see a movie or two with that David Cross that was kind of funny, it made me wish that the real David Cross, who played violin and keyboards, could be a little more funny. Maybe he could tell jokes. Maybe he could just stop playing the... Or, wait, there was a comedian, Henny Youngman. He was a very old guy with a violin. And he used to go up on a stage and go, take my wife. And then he'd go, ee, and everyone thought it was funny. And he was the one to tell the dumb joke, I just flew in from LA and boy, are my arms tired. Like, those jokes were terrible. But he stood there with a violin and everyone thought he was great. Maybe there could be a double David Cross thing too. Like one dude tells jokes and the other guy stands there kind of doing a Henny Youngman play-along thing.
Maybe it can be a supplemental income for certain careers.
It's like
big career move. In the 80s you do comedy, and then you do big comeback in the 90s. I don't know.
Chris.
There's so many options.
Right, it's like crisscross, like crossing, like they're crossing each. Mm-hmm. So, but only if you have a high awareness do these problems even exist. But like Now,
And sorry, talking about crisscross, that there was an artist, there was a band from 90s. It was
hold it. Wait a minute. You just said it. Chris Cross, there's that singer, and then there's another Chris Cross in Ultravox.
yeah, and then also there's a crisscross child band rap duo.
Dude,
A rap pop duo from the 90s.
You're
this
right.
Is mind blowing.
we didn't even plan this one.
Yeah.
We didn't plan this at all.
It's like everywhere.
So Chris
Musicians are everywhere.
So we got Chris Cross, the guy singing "Sailing Takes Me Away,"
Chris, yes.
right? And then we got Chris Cross in Ultravox. And what instrument did he play? Warren Cann played drums. Billy Currie played keyboard. So I'm thinking Chris Cross played like bass.
More guitar.
He played bass. Midger played guitar. So, but then you're right. That song "Chris Cross," which I think I got home the melody to, but I think it would offend the listeners because I'd have to cite it from memory. Do you remember the melody to that song from the kid group?
Remember,
But is there a possibility that all three could just do one project again, crisscross, like the kids, the guy from Ultravox, and is the other crisscross still alive? I mean, unless
I'm not sure, but the kids are now in their, let me see, in their mid-30s or something like that.
But it's like
So we have a good
right, they're
full,
alive.
full band there.
But as far as, and the other thing I never investigated when I was young was why wouldn't Chris Cross do sailing races and sponsor things or why wouldn't he be involved in like races with boats and sailing?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about that now on this podcast. This is
And
just.
who knows? Maybe it already happened because there are so many.
I'm gonna check on YouTube.
So many companies that monitor these musicians and the content of the songs and license it for their products.
That wasn't unplanned one.
exactly.
I didn't see that one coming. On drummers now, this one might have threw people, but like Alan White, drummer for Yes, right? He replaces Bill Bruford, 1973,
And Eric
72.
Clapton, I think.
He played with John Lennon. He played with John.
Eric Clapton, he did something.
He did a lot of everything back then before he landed in just like mostly Yes. And then, so we like that as guys. But then all of a sudden the 90s come and they're like, yeah, that Alan White, what a great drummer. I just thought it was an echoing thought. And then tell about the drummer in Oasis, Alan White. I'm like, well,
It's a young hip band from the 90s, and then you have this guy who was considered as dinosaur by maybe that generation.
And right now,
it would have been amazing to really connect different generations and to.
True. I don't want to offend Alan White if he's listening to this, meaning the guy from Yes, but because you might have suffered a setback with the old feet, and you got that guy Jay Shellen helping, why not just have the Oasis drummer guy just play drums in Yes? Yeah. And then when someone honestly asks, is Alan White actually playing drums in Yes? You can say, yep, absolutely. There was also an Alan White guitar player, I think, who played with Morrissey. Got to double check that, but I think he played on the year Arsenal.
Wikipedia.
It's spelled differently, though. I think it's W-Y, something like that. Why? So
I think that counts. Actually, my next example will be.
But if the spelling's different, but again, the spelling could be off a little bit. But if you're in a conversation and you go, and in the 90s, you go, that Alan White, man, what a great drummer. And you mean Oasis and another guy means Yes. Right now, it's all flattening out. Because I think the drummer from Oasis is doing much more.
White.
Oh, yeah, there it is. See, it's spelled Alain White, right? Is that an I in the first name on the Morrissey guitar player?
Y-T.
I don't see why they can't all do a project together.
Yeah.
But just same names. I'm just saying branding, and then just agree on one spelling.
And then we have I have actually two more that just came to me.
Whoa.
John Anderson, yes, and then there's some John Anderson country star.
I believe so, and there was also a guy who ran for president in 1980 named John Anderson.
In which country?
Oh, here he was an independent candidate, and he was considered, and everyone had like John Anderson bumper stickers, but it contributed nothing to Yes because he was out, but he was John.
I think the country star is also John, but since
But you got to work with what you got, right? So, we all can. But if you want to stay on Yes sound-alikes, here's another one because we went from Alan White. What about Steve Howe? I know you're like, whoa. So
There's
Steve,
another Steve Howe?
yeah, no, there's another Steve Howe, bro.
Again, this is...
Bro, check this out.
ridiculous.
Steve Howe, you know, classic guitar player from Yes. We know he played in Bodist and Tomorrow. More famously after that in Asia and GTR, and you know, and then he's more famously the only custodian in Yes right now, playing guitar. But there was a confusion. There was a Steve Howe, baseball player, who started with the Angels and more finished with the Yankees, but he got busted for drugs like 8 times. And every time they had an
Another
announcement,
scandal. This is
dude, on one of the drug busts, because the radio, you know, back then, no internet, they'd be like, 1010 Newins. They'd be like, Steve Howe busted again for drugs. I'd be like, again? What do you mean again? When was the first time? Well, is that the reason there's a problem with Yes or a problem with Asia? I'm like, I thought John Wetton had the problem. And then you find out, oh, I'm like this baseball guy. So then after a while, you're like, how many times can a guy get busted in baseball and then keep his job? Makes you think about like, wow, what do I got to do to join Major League Baseball? And then you think if Steve Howe and Yes got busted 8 times for drugs, you don't think Yes would have had a band meeting and kicked them out? You see? That's our issue.
Not the drug band.
No.
It wasn't.
No, and those guys aren't interchangeable like that, because I don't think Steve Howe, the baseball player, is dead, by the way, so I don't think he could play guitar. And I damn well, you look at Steve Howe from Yes, I mean, he looks like a crazy old guy. He doesn't look like he'd hold a baseball bat. So, but when you hear these things announced in the press and there's, you know, scandal associated, it's not easy on anybody. I think I had like one more that kind of funny, I guess, which would be
I think I have a really good one, maybe for the.
You want to let it out, man. Don't hold back.
This is different spelling, but it's a really good story. Ritchieblackmore and Rick Blakemore. So Jolene Turner, who was the last singer of Rainbow in the 80s, he was in a band called Fandango.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, the guitarist in Fandango was called Rick Blakemore. And then after he got the job in Rainbow, then he met Ritchie Blackmore. For him, it must have been mind-blowing.
Right, but
So
if
to
they...
work with this guy, and then the other guy is like, it's almost the same, but probably different personalities, but the name.
They'd probably be offended going, I'm not like the other guy. So like the jazz singer, Big Joe Turner, they'd be like, oh, Joe Lynn Turner, are you like him? No, he's nothing like you. Well, you like that, Joe? Look, it's not even the same name. Close enough? Is that where we're going with this, Joe? And I think Joe would have flipped his hair back and went, hey, man, I'm the future. You're the past. As Ritchie Blackmore quoted him and saying to the late, great John Lord, which was a kind of a ridiculous comment when you think about it. But on my silly list, I could leave it on this one because there's just too many we could actually drum up. But this one was, so you got Brian May from Queen, Mr. Guitar Player, Mr. Architect of their orchestral sound with Freddie Mercury. And then you find out there's, Brian May, the film composer. So then you're like seeing a movie and it says, composed by Brian May. I go, yep, sounds like a great movie. And then you listen to the soundtrack extra going, and then you're playing a trick with your mind going, wait a minute, I really think I'm hearing some guitar parts from News of the World on this. Yeah, this is great. Oh, and then it's not the guy. So then the wrench get thrown. I can't remember the movie, but then Brian May from Queen went and did a film soundtrack, and it said, oh, soundtrack by Brian May, but it was like really Brian May, which may have confused people because they may have been looking for the other Brian May going, oh, no, we want a film soundtrack. We don't want any rock and roll. Who the hell are you? Who do you think you are doing film soundtrack music?
Makes no sense. It's like...
It's a lot to ponder on. So look, if anyone doesn't have these issues, that's great. That's just freaking fantastic for you. But if you never ever had any name confusion, you're just a wonderful person. But we've come across this and we thought this was worth addressing.
Yes, and I think worth exploring. So, thank you, everybody.
For more questions and comments on the same name subject, you're able to email us. Don't we have an email?
catchtheroundabout at gmail.com.
Is it?
Yes,
it is catch
yes,
the
yes.
Okay. You sure it's nothing else? I want to make sure. We know.
That's the one, yes.
Do you have to know your own?
We don't mislead.
Do you have to know your own email for your own show? I guess you do, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know your phone number, by the way?
Oh, yes.
See, okay.
Yes.
I'm not sure. All right. Well, we're going to leave it right here and until the next stream of consciousness kicks in. Until then, catch the roundabout.